in journals and in the popular press. We also have Aishwarya Kapoor, Executive Editor, Politics at the Republic Media Network, to moderate this distinguished panel. So it's over to you, Aishwarya.
Well, absolutely. After the lunch session, we have a full-pack house here, and as I said, you introduce all the panelists wonderfully. Mr. Pavan Varma, former diplomat, Gaurav Bhatia, Supreme Court lawyer, national spokesperson of the BJP, and Arun Kumar, a senior economist. Arunji, I begin with you. Everyone who's ever read any of your articles know that you're a staunch critique of Prime Minister Modi. You say that not Modi, but his policies. I really want to ask you, Arunji, you just don't like the man's face, or is it really the policies? Because the way you write, it feels as if there's something personal there. Huh? Please tell us today.
Aishwarya, I've never been personal. It's not in my nature. I'm essentially a writer and diplomat who also joined politics and went to the Rajya Sabha. I try to be as dispassionate as possible, and let me say, Mr. Narendra Modi is a good-looking man. That apart, in a democracy, I don't believe there is scope for coercive conformity. We are entitled to our points of view. We may have our disagreements. We don't penalize dissent. And therefore, I have no antipathy either to the leader or necessarily to the party, but I stand very often in criticism of their policies. And I believe in a democracy, I am entitled to do it.
No, but sometimes you're wrong, Mr. Varma, because you said that the Indian government is mesmerized by the virtue of their own statistics. Tell me if I'm wrong, sir. You said that, right?
Mesmerized by?
Mesmerized by the virtue of their own statistics. That is, they are taken over by their own numbers. They come out with their numbers. And you said that...
let me tell you.
Yeah.
I would like to...
Just let me tell you why you were wrong there, sir. When I was Ornob in the... like as we just began, when we began our India Economic Summit, he also quoted, and I am also quoting the IMF chief economist remarking India as sort of a bright light. So what's happening is, while internationally the policies are being acclaimed, accepted, a thought process within or a faction within says no, everything is wrong, everything is bad. So is it the hate towards the political ideology?
I don't know if you consider the man who hands-on runs the RSS, Dattatreya Hospal, as a critic. Because if he's not, recently...
No, but did you listen to the full speech? Because Gaurav would want to come on this.
I am just coming to that. In a recent speech at the Swadeshi Jagran Manch,
yes,
instead of being mesmerized by only the positivities projected very efficiently by this government and reinforced by competent spokesmen like Gaurav, he drew attention to the suffering and pain of the underbelly of the economy where the large masses of the people are involved. He had the frankness, the courage, and the objectivity and honesty to do it.
Gaurav Bhatia, you need to pick up the mic now.
Thank you.
So you heard Mr. Pavan Varma. Mr. Arun Kumar has yet not come in, and you have a lot of questions to answer. Gaurav Bhatia.
The beauty of our democracy is that people like Pavan Varma ji, who is very erudite, and we hold him in very high esteem, can criticize us. And believe me, there is no greater satisfaction than to listen to his criticism and then also show him that he is not 100% right. India is progressing on the right path and is leading from the front under the leadership of Shri Narendra Modi ji today. And why do I say that? I say this with a lot of conviction in our leader, Shri Narendra Modi ji, because when people of the country, they say Modi hai to mumkin hai, to wo aise hi nahi kehte, Aishwarya. I remember being very young, following politics in India. I wasn't in politics at that time. I remember there was a term, policy paralysis. Yes, decisions were not taken by the earlier government. I remember the term that India's economy all over the world was termed as fragile five economy. Today, I can proudly say, they dream a lot, but ultimately the man who ensures that the dreams are fulfilled for the common man is Narendra Modi ji. And I give the example of GST. GST was a dream that they had implemented by Shri Narendra Modi ji, and today the naysayers thought that GST in the quasi-federal structure that we have will not work in India. But month after month, the collection of the GST is around 1.4 lakh crore. Every month. What does it show? It shows the grit, determination of an honest Prime Minister who is working for the people of the country. And second, just a few weeks back, India became the 5th largest economy in the world. Right? You can you can be a naysayer, you can criticize India for its fiscal policies. But overall, the economy is strong, and Narendra Modi ji and Nirmala Sitharaman ji are leading from the front. Third, if I could just give one more number and then you may ask me a question.
Okay.
The first quarter of 2022-23 shows a growth of 13.5% for our economy, and this is when we are facing two big hurdles which are being faced by other countries also. First, the pandemic itself, and second, the war between Russia and Ukraine. But the Indian economy is resilient, progressing fast, and yes, we are proud of the fact that there are various schemes that the benefit is trickling down to the poor, to the marginalized, which is the policy of our government.
Pavanji, just a minute, I haven't taken the initial remarks from Mr. Kumar. Mr. Arun Kumar, back in 2021 and January, if I'm not wrong, you said that when India was under lockdown and the world was going through the COVID time, you said that the Indian economy or the GDP, your exact words were that the GDP would shrink by 29%. You gave that prediction. And you were wrong, sir.
No, I don't.
You were wrong.
No.
No. And I'll tell you why you were wrong, sir. The mic, yeah.
Yeah.
No. Just let me complete, because of the contrary.
It's hard to admit you are wrong sometimes.
The contraction was only 6.6%. And you said it will be 29%. And hence I say, is it Modi whom you hate, or is it the policy? Let's be clear about it.
So let me try and explain what I
Please
said.
do, sir.
Yeah. So, the Indian economy consists of two parts, the organized sector and the unorganized sector. It's the unorganized sector which employs 94% of the workforce. Organized sector only employs 6% of the workforce. It's the unorganized sector that took the big hit. That's 31% of GDP. That actually literally closed down. If you take that into account, then you find that it was minus 29%. And our official data, if you look at today what we discuss is the quarterly data. In the quarterly data, apart from agriculture, there is no unorganized sector. So the 31% doesn't get counted at all. And that's why I still maintain what I said earlier, that if you take the unorganized sector into account, and I wrote a piece in The Hindu 4 months back in which I showed Indian economy's rate of growth today is not 7.5%, but 1%. And given that the organized sector is declining, now it's become zero or negative. I hope that makes clear what exactly I was saying.
No, you were trying to say, but then according to the government figures, because you say the organized and the unorganized sector, you say that you were still right and it's still 29%. I'll let Gaurav Bhatia counter it, but I'm just taking a counter from Mr. Pavan Varma. He wanted to make a point back.
No, I liked Gaurav's intervention and the number of times he said Prime Minister Narendra Modi. It's a good sign. Absolute fealty to the leader needed to be repeated many times in order to establish your credibility, as I used to see in the old days in East Europe with communist regimes. I'm sure it was unintentional. However, let me tell you, statistics are statistics are statistics. I am not trying to make this a partisan political debate. I'm giving you what are the reasons why we need not to be, to quote my word again, mesmerized by certain statistics and ignore other realities. Why am I saying this?
So which reality is being ignored?
Let me finish. Let me finish.
Please,
Aishwarya,
please.
You must not allow the voice of difference to be quiet. I'm saying, in a country where the GDP has grown, not everything is black and white. The government has done good as well, including some areas of reform, like RERA, Insolvency and Bankruptcy Act,
So you accept that?
So I accept that. I am saying that today, if Dattatreya Hospile says that 200 million people are living on less than $2 a day in unacceptable poverty.
But
Now,
did
one
you-
second.
No.
Secondly,
But did you hear the full speech, Pavan Varma?
yeah, let me finish here. Aishwarya, don't be so defensive. So, secondly, the latest figures from Pew Research 2021 say that the middle class has shrunk from 99 million in 2020 to 66 million in 2021. It also gives the statistics that the absolutely poor rose from 59 million in 2020 to 134 million in 2021. This is a country where, in spite of the top 100 companies making profits, and we are proud of them, this is a country where inflation is at a new high, unemployment is rampant. About LPG costs 1,000 rupees edible. People say, we are not against you, but please take into account not only the positives that you din in day in, day out, but the actual suffering of the people. People are looking for jobs. People cannot manage the prices. You have increased the cess, the duties, excise duty on petrol and diesel by 344%. Where is the common man going to pay? And jobs, 22 crore people have applied for jobs since 2014.
Yes.
7 lakh of them got a job. According to CMIE, 12 crore jobs have been lost by a government that came
Mr.
to
Pavan
power
Varma.
giving the promise
No,
of
are you-
2 crore jobs every year. So
Mr.
I am
Varma.
saying, there is a plus and there is a minus. I don't like to deal in polarities. No government has not contributed to the overall progress of the country. But I am saying, get a balance, get a perspective.
The balance should be
You
there,
must
but
be able to understand that this was a great mistake BJP committed in 2004 when it went into a campaign of India Shining. And people were standing in queues behind the glitz and glamour, trying to eke out a life. So don't fall into that trap. Take the realities on the ground.
Gaurav Bhatia, are you not, is your government not realizing, is your party not
Yeah,
realizing
let
the
me
reality?
just respond.
But the irony is that Pavan Varma ji was saying that the government shouldn't be mesmerized by the numbers, and he was full of numbers today. Only facts, numbers.
Pavan ji, whom I hold in very high esteem, spoke about my credibility. Pavan ji, I just want to tell you that when a man works hard, he doesn't have to take someone's name to establish his credibility. But yes, I feel honored to take the name of the Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi ji. It is much better than taking the name of likes of Afzal Guru and others, which the opposition has been doing. And अर्ज किया है, आप ही के लिए कह रहा हूं, विरोधियों का मैं बड़ा एहतराम करता हूं, विरोधियों का मैं बड़ा एहतराम करता हूं, मुखालफत से मेरी शख्सियत निखरती है. ये प्रधानमंत्री जी के लिए भी है और भाजपा के सारे लीडर्स के. आप जितना विरोध करते हैं वो उतना निखर के निकलते हैं. Now let me also give some numbers. As I said, you can criticize, but criticize on the basis of some hard facts. Don't just criticize for the sake of criticizing. GST लागू नहीं हो पाएगी, करके दिखाई. अभी आपने बात करी
जी.
आपने पूछा, इन्होंने तारीफ करी, who brought the insolvency code? The Congress couldn't. Policy paralysis. We did. Supreme Court, in its judgment in Swiss Ribbons case, praises the government that more than 1.5 lakh crore rupee of NPAs and bad debt has been recovered by this government. And I'm saying, neutrally speaking, though the biggest witness to the progress of our country in the economic arena are the people of the country who are voting and blessing our government. But just today, IMF chief calls India only bright spot. Two things are very important. India only, that means we are doing very well even compared to the developed economies of the world, and the bright spot. And these are the numbers for you, Pavanji. When World Bank and IMF, they actually reduce the growth forecast. The naysayers come out and they say, देखिए, कम हो गई growth rate. The numbers are this. For the year 2023, amongst the advanced economies and the emerging market and developing economies, which is the fastest growing economy in the world, I can proudly say it is India at 6.1%. Even China, that these people look up to and give us the numbers in comparison, will be growing at 4.4%. And United States at 1%, Germany at minus 0.3%, France at 0.7%. The point I'm trying to make is, India is growing steadily, and we have seen some macro changes in the way things are implemented now. And one such example would be direct benefit transfer. Around 24.8 lakh crore rupees have been transferred to the accounts of citizens who require support from the government, and without a rupee being siphoned off or any trace of corruption. This is the honest government of Shri Narendra Modi ji, working tirelessly day and night to empower the marginalized. Yes, you can make recommendations, you can criticize us, but don't always make it a perpetual habit to criticize every policy, every move of Shri Narendra Modi ji's government.
Arun Kumar wanted to comment, and I'm just coming back.
Maybe my credibility goes up further.
Arun Kumar, Arun Kumar.
You know, I think what we need to discuss is the policy paradigm. You know, it's within a policy paradigm that policies are made. Now, the critics are critiquing the policy paradigm, which is what I think we need to consider. And in this policy paradigm, what we are following are what are called the supply side policies rather than the demand side policies. It is demand which is at the moment short, and that's why private sector is not investing as much as it could invest otherwise if there was demand. And why is demand short? Because large number of people from the unorganized sector have been hit very hard. As the eShram portal data, which has come out recently, where 27.5 crore people are registered, it shows that 94% are earning less than 10,000 rupees a month.
Yeah.
So they are the people who are not able to afford, given the price rise, the consumption, and that's why the consumer confidence, if you look at the RBI data, the consumer confidence data that has come out in the MPC report now, that is showing it's still at 82, whereas before the pandemic it was at 104, so consumer confidence has not revived.
So
that's
the
why
only
demand is, so let me just complete.
Please.
Compared to 2019, our GDP is only 4% higher, consumption is still not back on, and this is the organized sector data. So organized sector consumption has not come back up, so unorganized sector data has suffered far more, and that's why capacity utilization is low, that's why investment has not grown, and that's why the rate of growth even before the pandemic had been falling from 8% to 3.1%. So those headwinds are still with us. Now let's come to the IMF and the World Bank saying that Indian economy is doing well.
Yeah.
They are not data gathering agencies. They only take the government data and they use the government data to do the analysis. So whatever is the mistakes in the government data are also the mistakes in the IMF and the World Bank data. The unorganized sector remains unaccounted in the government data, and that's why the rate of growth is high, because the organized sector is doing well. And why is it doing well? Because demand has been shifting from the unorganized to the organized sector.
Arunji.
So just to complete,
Please,
you know, if you look at the trade sector, for instance, demand has shifted from neighborhood stores to e-commerce. I mean, I, for instance, did not order anything from e-commerce before the pandemic, now order everything from there. So the visit to the neighborhood store is much less. Similarly, look at the pressure cooker industry, where there are 5 units in the organized sector, 25 in the unorganized sector, and demand has shifted. The organized sector is growing at 24% because the unorganized sector is not able to cope. Look at the Hindustan Unilever annual report. It says our share of the market has gone up because demand has come to us. So if you look at all this, demand is shifting away from the unorganized sector, which is declining.
So let me just...
And if you take that into account, the GDP rate of growth is not 7.5%, it is close to 0%.
Sir, I'm ready to take everything in account, every numbers, Pavan Varma ji's number, Gaurav Bhatia ji's numbers, yours numbers. But if you ask anyone in the crowd, or if you just step out and ask anyone today, in Delhi, in India, sir, what matters to them is what is their buying capacity, how it has changed. Coming down to the crux. If you get into the details, it becomes a bit more complex for the common man. Usko ye farak padta hai ki mere 100 rupees mein, what I was able to buy 5 साल पहले या 5 साल बाद?
So,
What is
unorganized-
the value of my money? मेरे रुपए की क्या value है?
So unorganized sector.
Sir, it all comes down to that.
So the unorganized sector is not here. We are all from the upper classes.
Yes.
Okay. So this hall is not representative of what's happening.
The
in the-
unorganized sector, I take your
The
point.
unorganized sector, by definition, cannot bargain for higher wages. Inflation is very high, and that means that their purchasing power is going down. And you look at the rural employment guarantee
Varma ji.
scheme. Rural employment guarantee scheme, the RBI says only 50 days of work is being provided, whereas 100 days of work is promised. And therefore, the demand from the unorganized sector for employment is very high. The unemployment figures, look at the labor force participation rate. In Brazil, China, it's about 65. In India, it's
So you
45.
feel, in other words, nothing right is happening. That is
That's
what you're
not the
trying to say,
point.
Arunji.
The point I'm making is we have to
Coming,
have a
Pavanji.
balance between what is happening and what is being projected.
Okay, point taken.
So,
Pavan Varma.
Very quickly, when you overemphasize some facts and gloss over the others, generally speaking, you come out with a one-sided picture. We are not decrying the normal achievements of a government, and I have paid tribute to them as well. My point is very simple. When you take only an insular view of only the positives, you are making a big mistake as a political party. And I am reminded of a couplet, seeing the list of statistics Gaurav released. Very simple couplet. गुनाहगार समझेगी दुनिया तुझे, गुनाहगार समझेगी दुनिया तुझे, बस इतनी भी ज्यादा सफाई न दे. So you can go on giving statistics. The fact of the matter is, in the global hunger index, now, if you praise the IMF, please accept some other world rankings as well. Global hunger index, India, in spite of this great progress, has fallen from a position at 55 in 2014 to 101 in 2021. You have a country where 800 million people are living on a government given dole in order to get one meal a day. And you are saying the IMF has given us a certificate. We are the future. We will be the future. I am a great optimist. But sir, one last point only. If in a country, 1% of the top segment owns 73% of the wealth of a country, there is something wrong. In other words, we are fast becoming one of the most unequal societies in the world, and therefore, my request to this government, my angst against the government is that you came with an absolute majority. Not once but twice. And in the end, you've fallen flat between two stools. Neither did you use that absolute majority to push through economic reforms diligently. And that may have been short-term pain for long-term gain. Nor did you do enough to create a more equitable society. And even worse, you refuse to recognize that there is pain and hurt. भाई उपचार कब होगा जब आप पहले समझेंगे कि समस्या क्या है?
गौरव भाटिया, समस्या नहीं समझ रहे हैं आप पवन वर्मा कह रहे हैं?
देखिए, कपलेट सुनाया पवन जी ने, तो मैं भी जवाब कपलेट से ही देना चाहूंगा. पहले उन्हें गुमा है कि मेरी उड़ान कम है, उन्हें गुमा है कि मेरी उड़ान कम है, मुझे यकीन है पूरा आसमान कम है. This is the story of India. People believe in the leadership of Shri Narendra Modi ji and honest politicians, and I would say even in the opposition. But don't criticize for the sake of criticizing. My second point would be, he mentioned about accepting the numbers coming from these world agencies, and we should not be selective. And I agree with him. Pavanji, when there is a downgrade, whether it is the rating of India, whether it is the growth rate, I have seen, not you particularly, but others, in the opposition quoting from the IMF data, World Bank data. But when I am telling you the IMF chief is saying that India is the bright spot in the world, we have a panelist here, he is not willing to accept that. He is saying, no, Indian growth story is at 0%. My point is simple. If you talk about the hunger index, first we should also commend the Herculean task of the government during the COVID pandemic, when there was a sensitive Prime Minister who ensured that 80 crore Indians for 2.5 years get free ration. And I say this was not a favor. It was a constitutional duty cast upon the government and the Prime Minister, and he came out with flying colors. That is why we feel proud of the fact. Second, you raised the issue of inflation, and I come, as you rightly said, very prepared with data. I would quote, during the earlier government, and it's a good way of actually showing the correct picture to every citizen of the country. First of all, the two international factors that I've already named have a bearing on the Indian economy and the geopolitical system here. But at the same time, there was a policy paralysis. Government earlier in power, what were the numbers of inflation? 2008, 9.09%, 2009, 12.31%, 2010, 10.53%, and I can go on till 2013. The average was double-digit inflation, and the growth was less, the net difference was in minus. That means inflation was growing at a faster pace and the economy was growing at a slower pace. And then Narendra Modi ji came to power. 2014, the GDP growth went up to 7.41%, inflation came down to 5.8%, 2015 4.9%, 2016 4.5%, 2017 3.6%. All these years, the net difference is a positive one. What does it show? The inflation is controlled. The average inflation in the last 8.5 years has been around 4%. And even during these two, international issues that we have seen the inflation is at 6.5%. COVID pandemic and Russia-Ukraine war, which has a bearing on every major economy. India, we know, is a major economy because of crude oil prices also getting affected. It has a bearing on the Indian economy also. Second, you spoke about employment, and I am very grateful to you. But I must tell you, CMIE is what you quoted, Pavanji. And CMIE data of 6th October 2022 says the unemployment rate in India is 6.4%, which is lowest in the last 2 years after we have seen the pandemic. And again, I don't want to make this debate, about BJP ruled states and Congress ruled states, but you will agree with me that if the union government can take positive measures to generate employment, so can the state government do. And the numbers that I am about to present will give you a clearer picture. BJP ruled state, the unemployment rate, Gujarat 1.6%, Karnataka 3.8%, Madhya Pradesh 0.9%, Maharashtra 4%, UP 4%. And Jharkhand it is 12.2%, Rajasthan 24%, Pavanji, 24%. What am I trying to say here? That the national average also is going up because of the opposition ruled states, and I'm not criticizing them. Take benefit of the central government sponsored schemes rather than treating us like an enemy, because we are not an enemy. You may criticize us, but we would fight fiercely for your right to criticize us, as was said by Evelyn Beatrice. Thank you.
Arun Kumar ji doesn't look satisfied at all.
I want to say that, during the last 8 years, we've had policy-induced crisis. Policy-induced crisis.
Policy-induced crisis.
Yeah. So demonetization created a crisis in the economy. GSTs created a crisis, and then NBFC crisis has created a crisis, and then the immediate lockdown that took place, that created a crisis. And why do I say that? Because during demonetization, where everybody agreed that the economy went down dramatically, but the official data showed the highest growth rate of the decade. So, that shows that the credibility of the data is something that we need to worry about. Similarly, the unemployment situation, let us look at the facts. The unemployment rate is highest amongst women. The labor force participation rate has dropped dramatically. So women have withdrawn from the labor force. And the youth, 15 to 29, the unemployment is the highest. And the higher the level of education, higher the unemployment. So actually what's happening in the Indian economy is that because you can't afford to be unemployed, you go out and do something. So therefore you get counted as employed, but that's not good employment. There's huge underemployment. So there's 15% underemployment, 10% disguised unemployment, and there are about 20% who are outside the labor force. Because
Pavan Varma ji?
so therefore, you have 270 million people who need more work.
I am a great supporter of governments that
What are you saying?
I am a great supporter of governments that take quick decisions. Sometimes I wonder how those decisions are made. Take demonetization. Overnight, you create a dislocation and disruption which may also have positive spin-offs in greater digitization, perhaps more transparent financial structures. But the sheer degree of turmoil, economic turmoil and dislocation that followed, I know of serious economists who say at a conservative estimate, it slashed 2% of the GDP because it was just not properly enough prepared. So decision making per se is not a good thing. Secondly, Gauravji rightly said that don't criticize for the sake of criticizing. I think he has made this point more than once. Sir, what else do we criticize for? We criticize for you to understand that there is scope for criticism. Ghalib has a very simple couplet. हर एक बात पे कहते हो तुम कि तू क्या है? तुम ही कहो कि ये अंदाज़े गुफ्तगू क्या है? तो भाई बात वो करे और हम सुना करें, तो ऐसे तो नहीं हो सकता ना, ये लोकतंत्र है.
And this is your final take,
Yes.
because this is going to take more than a debate to settle these
No,
two individuals.
there is nothing to settle here. I think we are working together for the progress of our country. But since he cited a couplet from Ghalib,
आप भी देंगे
तो
couplet?
मैं भी एक couplet
हाँ,
जरूर सुनाऊंगा.
ठीक है, आ जाए.
तुम इतना जो मुस्कुरा रहे हो, क्या गम है जिसको छुपा रहे हो?
पवन जी,
मैं कॉमन मैन का गम छुपा रहा हूं.
देखिए, ऐसा है, when historic decisions are taken within a span of 8.5 years, Pavan ji, like implementation of one rank, one pension, Article 370, Constitution of India is my Bible, and I'm sure it is your Bible too, the holy book. Article 370 started with the word temporary, but we have to acknowledge and bravely acknowledge that none of the prime ministers before Shri Narendra Modi ji could muster the courage to actually abrogate Article 370, a historic decision. When we have a national war memorial, it's a historic decision. During COVID pandemic, and we have all gone through it, and everybody sitting in the audience needs to be praised for the effort that they put in. I've seen people from humble backgrounds, even people from affluent backgrounds coming out and doing whatever they could for the common man. And the opposition that criticizes for the sake of opposition said, ye vaccine mat lagana, varna upar chale jaoge. Narendra Modi ji, the brave leader that he is, he came out and co-vaccine lagwaya. 220 crore vaccine doses have been given to the citizens of the country. It shows grit, determination, honesty in the leadership, and that is why I say, मुश्किलें बहुत आएंगी. आप कभी हाथ थाम के तो देखिए, कोई मुश्किल ऐसी नहीं जिसको हम परास्त ना करें.
हाथ थाम के तो देखिए. नहीं, आ रहा हूं.
वो आ रहे हैं.
अरुण जी, आ रहा हूं. हाथ थाम नहीं रहे हैं आप, पवन जी.
नहीं, मैं तो
थामने को तैयार.
मुझे सहल हो गई मंजिलें, वो हवा के रुख पे बदल गए, तेरा हाथ हाथ में आ गया कि चिराग राह में जल गए. तो we are one nation. We are jointly, collectively, unifiedly concerned about the quality and content of our progress.
Okay.
But sir, if today a great nation with a great cerebral heritage, going back to the dawn of time, 5,000 years, which believed in interrogation, criticism, inquiry, if this is the nation we are in, and Gaurav, I know, is a very intelligent young man, if he uses the word Prime Minister Narendra Modi making a tribute to him, please see when you are doing the recording, how many times it requires to be said. I'm not against him. I'm just saying you must have a situation.
I take your point,
the
Pavan ji, that you are not against
there's a
Gaurav. You are not
BBC
against
accent.
Mr. Bhupendra Yadav, who's just come in, the
Yeah,
central
I
minister.
know.
You are not
When
against
he's
him.
an old
I
friend.
know.
We were in Parliament together, and I
know.
was chairing a standing committee of which I was a member, consultative committee. I'm just saying, there is an old BBC maxim. Admit your minor truths in order to have your major lies believed. इतना तो मान लीजिए कि अभी मंजिलें और हैं, चुनौतियां और हैं.
Who's denying that?
नहीं, इसलिए मैं कह रहा हूं क्योंकि अगर आप वर्जन सुनिए इस प्रोग्राम में ही नहीं तो कोई चीज गलत हुई नहीं है. और मैं कहता हूं ये हमारे देश के लिए हानिकारक है. It's not good because the suffering and pain is also very evident and visible.
Final comments, Arun ji. Fine.
I think
30 seconds.
This entire thing is about India becoming a superpower. So let's go away from the tutu.
You don't like it?
No, I'm saying let's go away from
you don't want it, Arun ji?
And what I'm saying is, what
No,
are
I'm
the
asking,
challenges?
you don't want it?
What are the challenges that we need to look at? Environment is one challenge. Social sector, education is another challenge.
The minister
Research and development, that's a big challenge because we need to move ahead in technology. So let's go to the positives as
While
to
you
what...
speak, minister is listening. Yeah.
No, I'm saying why we need to go ahead and how do we go ahead. That's the point of debate, you know. So the point of debate, I think what we need to know is that the new normal that has been created, how are we going to face the challenges of the new normal? And in that, the Cold War that is already going on, how do we going to face the challenges? Then only will we become a superpower. Otherwise,
pointing
keep pointing.
Just 10 seconds. 10 seconds.
10 seconds.
Then I need to.
We are in this fight together. So I'm reminded as a last couplet that I want India to be in a position where it says, मत पूछ कि क्या हाल है मेरा तेरे पीछे, मत पूछ कि क्या हाल है मेरा तेरे पीछे, तू देख कि क्या रंग है तेरा मेरे आगे, तू देख कि क्या रंग है मेरा तेरे आगे.
क्या रंग है
So let us all work for that goal, and for that we have to be sensitive.
Gaurav Bhatia. Final one before I end.
A couplet should also be answered with a couplet, and I will end with that.
Okay.
हम वो दरिया है जिसे अपना हुनर मालूम है, हम जिस तरफ चल देंगे रास्ते बन जाएंगे. This is the story of India, and we shall succeed. And I must also say that today, when we talk about the Prime Minister of the country, and I take his name with reverence, with a lot of pride, for the fact that I have seen after decades that when a Prime Minister is elected and he is serving as the Chief Minister, he comes and he gives us 21 lakh rupees of his personal income, so that daughters of the government employees there can be given good education. I see him putting his forehead before the parliament, which is the temple of democracy. I've never seen that earlier in my life, and that is why I'm proud of it. Thank you.
And on that point, I just want to end it with Pavan Varma ji said ki we are one India, all of us are together. But it's going to take more than 30 minutes to convince Pavan Varma and Arun Kumar. That's for sure. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I was the one who said it.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Aishwarya, Mr. Varma, Mr. Bhatia, and Professor Kumar. Very pertinent points that were made. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me now in welcoming our next guest. He's the one tasked with the responsibility to skill everyone to get employed and to put India's name on the top of the list. With 18% of the world's population, providing jobs for everyone is not an easy task. Mr. Bhupendra Yadav steers the Labour and Employment Ministries not only through implementation of labour code revamps, but also by addressing unemployment concerns, building safety nets for migrant labour, and attuning labour policies to industry growth. But with increasing startups and MSMEs